What's good, YouTubers and YouTubettes? This is JBsports back again with another one. Boxing promoter and president of Matchroom Boxing, Eddie Hearn, recently did an interview with Cyrus XM Boxing. He was talking about a matchup that just got finalized between Dillian Whyte versus Alexander Povetkin, the rematch. The first fight was ended in dramatic fashion as Alexander Povetkin was able to come from behind after facing adversity and catch Dillian Whyte with a vicious uppercut after trailing on all three judges' scorecard. It was a dramatic knockout that took place in Eddie Hearn's backyard. Now they're slated to have the rematch on March the 6th. The fight will take place in the UK, and the venue is yet to be determined. Now, Eddie Hearn also stated that if they're able to come out victorious against Alexander Povetkin, that Dillian Whyte will then look to make a matchup with Deontay, the Bronze Bomber, Wilder. There can only be one Deontay Wilder. Yeah, Eddie Hearn, I can see he's out here making chess moves. Everybody else playing checkers. He's thinking 2 steps ahead of everybody. I'm going to tell you exactly how he's thinking and how his mindset is working as far as making a matchup between Dillian Whyte and Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder is in mediation with Tyson Fury. There's a high probability, not a certainty, but a high probability that Deontay Wilder will win his mediation with Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury has also stated that he will never again share the ring with Deontay Wilder after Deontay Wilder alleged that he used loaded gloves and he had someone spike his water. And he did a lot of dirty tactics during that second fight between those two guys that took place in Las Vegas, Nevada. A lot of putting him in the headlock, a la Mr. T, Clubber Lang putting Rocky in Rocky 3 in the headlock. A lot of dirty tactics, a lot of leaning on him, a lot of just dirty tactics, a lot of rough, outside the rules of boxing tactics that he used in that second encounter with Deontay Wilder. He says he will never ever share the ring with Deontay Wilder again, no matter what the ruling is. So if that's the case, if the mediated rules in Deontay Wilder's favor, they will strip Tyson Fury of the WBC title. But Tyson Fury would do what he did before the first fight with Deontay Wilder. He would say, I am the people's champ. I am the lineal heavyweight champion of the world. I defeated the man that beat the man in Vladimir Klitschko. And I am the man. I don't care nothing about the WBC title. He will proceed ahead with a matchup between him and Anthony Joshua, who holds the IBF, WBO, and WBA titles. So they would strip him of that title. And guess who was the first in line to get a crack at that title would be Deontay Wilder. And if Dillian Whyte beats Alexander Povetkin in a rematch, Eddie Hearn hopes he would be able to get his previous status as the WBC #1 ranked and mandatory fighter. Therefore, those two guys can get in the ring and fight for the WBC title. That's the end game as far as Eddie Hearn is concerned. And that's what this is all about. He's been wanting to make the matchup between Deontay Wilder and Dillian Whyte. This is going back at least 2 to 3 years ago after Dillian Whyte defeated Lucas Brown, and Dillian Whyte did a post-fight interview and said, I'm ready, let's go, I'm ready. And Deontay Wilder said, look, I have no problem fighting Dillian Whyte as long as you put Anthony Joshua on the end of that contract. And Eddie Hearn did like Red. On Friday, he said nope. And the fight never came to fruition. Eddie Hearn has been trying to make this fight. He's trying to get a stake in all of the titles. If he feels that if Dillian Whyte could beat Deontay Wilder, he'll have the WBC title. And Anthony Joshua defeats Tyson Fury, which could be for no belt, he will be the recognized #1 heavyweight in boxing. And then he'll be looking to make a matchup between Alexander Usyk, who I think has 1 fight left on the deal with Matchroom Boxing. Maybe that 1 fight deal is up. I don't know the paperwork. I don't know the details, but I know his last fight was a Eddie Hearn Matchroom promoted boxing card versus Derek Chisora. So if he fights Joe Joyce, that could be for the WBO interim belts. And therefore, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua could still be for the WBO belt and the WBA and the IBF. And then after that fight concludes, whoever wins out of Alexander Povetkin and Joe Joyce will be elevated to full-fledged WBO heavyweight full-fledged WBO heavyweight champion. That's the end game, ladies and gentlemen, for Eddie Hearn. So when he did that Cyrus XM boxing interview, a lot of people were like, oh man, I can't wait for this fight between Dillian Whyte, Deontay Wilder. That's going to be a great matchup. Eddie Hearn is just thinking 2 steps ahead about everybody. He said he's been hearing through the grapevine about how mediations has been going between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, and there's been a lot of speculation going on that Deontay Wilder will indeed win the mediation because the third fight happened by no fault of his own due to the coronavirus and due to the different networks, Fox and ESPN, having other obligations to show the NFL and college football. So we'll see what happens and we will see what transpires. But that is the end game for Eddie Hearn, CEO of Matchroom Boxing and boxing promoter, and the P. Diddy of boxing promoters. I need a girl to ride. I need a girl in my life. I'm internationally known on the microphone. Yeah, he's the P. Diddy, no doubt about it. And he's thinking 2 steps ahead of everybody, and that's the end game. We'll see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But as far as Dillian Whyte versus Deontay Wilder, that's a terrific lead-up and promotional lead-up to an explosive fight. Those guys do not like each other. There's no love lost between those 2 guys. The press conference is going to be epic. Hopefully, by the time they fight, they'll be able to have press conference where both guys will be in the same room, sitting down at the same table, and won't be virtually. That remains to be seen, but that would just make the press conference that much more better if those 2 guys are in the same room. They're going to have a lot of security. Just like Fat Joe said to 50 Cent at the VMA Awards, you're doing a lot of talking, but you know it's a lot of security at this award presentation and at this award show. And you're doing a lot of bumping at your gun, but there's a lot of security. And there's going to be a lot of security at that fight because those 2 guys are going to be mixing it up verbally and physically the way they have been going back and forth the last 2 or 3 years. That remains to be seen, and hopefully it'll happen sometime in the summer of 2021. We'll see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But as far as the matchup goes, Dillian Whyte says he's going to come out there and he's going to rush Deontay Wilder. He's going to put him on the back foot, try to do like Tyson Fury did in the second fight. A lot of people say that's the blueprint to beat Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder's been exposed with a guy that can't fight going backwards. But people got to fail to realize that was not the Deontay Wilder that we seen in his previous fights in the rematch versus Tyson Fury. He had no sting on his punches. He looked like a dead man walking out there for whatever reason. You're going to see more of what you saw in the Deontay Wilder when he fought Luis Ortiz in the first fight and in the second fight. How he fought against the Bermain Stervern in the rematch. There was a lot of bad blood going into that fight. I think you're going to see him on point, using the jab, setting up that right hand. So if Dillian Whyte rushes him, I think he'll have some success early on, backing him up with the jab, going to the body with the left hook. But I think it's just a matter of time before Wilder gets that distance with the jab, where he can set up that right hand with Dillian Whyte, a guy that doesn't move his head a lot and a guy that's easily hit. The guy that's defense is not superb. He's been hitting all his fights. He's been rocked by Chisora in the first and second fight. You saw he got put to sleep without the NyQuil by Alexander Povetkin. He's been hitting all his punches. He was in bad trouble, bad shape, almost knocked out by Joseph Parker, who is not known as a great puncher. Solid puncher, but not a guy that's known as one of the hardest hitters in the heavyweight division. So he's been in problems with guys that don't have nearly the power that Deontay Wilder has. And Deontay Wilder knows how to line up that right hand. And another thing that Dillian Whyte has got to be looking out for is he's going to be worried about that right hand. But you got to understand that left hook is what basically ended the fight with Luis Ortiz in their first fight. So his left hand is very underrated. And he's going to be able to catch him with that left hook if he's trying to take the right hand away from Deontay Wilder. So I'm looking for a 5th or 6th round knockout for Deontay Wilder in a matchup with Dillian Whyte. But I can't wait to see it. It'll be must-see TV. It'll be an action-packed fight. It could be similar to George Foreman versus Ron Lyle in an action-packed fight. Not that many knockdowns. I think it's just going to be one knockdown. I think once he catches him with that right hand, it's going to be all she wrote. I don't see multiple knockdowns like in the Ron Lyle fight and George Foreman fight, but I think it'll be a back-and-forth, big-time, lot of punches landed in the 5 or 6 rounds that it lasts. just like George Foreman versus Ron Lyle. I think it'll be a lot of punches landing, and I think it'll be an action-packed fight, and I think it'll be a back-and-forth battle before Deontay Wilder gets the knockout. Let me know your thoughts about the matchup between Dillian Whyte versus Deontay Wilder. But first, he's got to get through Alexander Povetkin, and that's not a guarantee, as he is, with his chin, which he has a glass jaw. He's got a chandelier glass jaw as far as Dillian Whyte is concerned. So he's got to navigate through choppy and troubled waters versus Alexander Povetkin. But if he's able to prevail against Alexander Povetkin, who is not the same fight he was a couple of years ago, but is a veteran who knows how to set up punches, who's a very smart fighter, high IQ, he's got to be very tough, very crafty fighter in Alexander Povetkin. So Dillian Whyte must be on top of this game and do what he did in the first fight, but don't make that mistake and get caught and get put to sleep. He's got to fight almost a perfect 12 rounds against Alexander Povetkin and not get caught, and be very, very careful and keep his guard up. And we'll see what happens, and we will see what transpires if he's able to get through Alexander Povetkin. But that's a big if. But if he's able to do that, that sets up the matchup that I really want to see, Dillian Whyte versus Deontay Wilder. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section about this potential matchup, and hit the like button if you like the content of this video, and subscribe to JB Sports, the man, the myth, the legend. I holla.